us from every corner of the world. I'm very glad to be part of this event, and hopefully we have a fruitful discussion and be able to some way contribute to what is happening in Myanmar and maybe do better. So to begin, I'd like to introduce Ms. Neha, who will start the event for us. Neha Dewan is a specialist in international relations and security, focusing on South Asian politics. Neha is the co-founder and chair of the IWIR Forum. She serves at as the program officer for culture for the UNESCO Cluster Office for Bangladesh, Bhutan, the Maldives, Nepal, India, and Sri Lanka. She's also a non-resident fellow at Global Policy Insights, where she leads the Commonwealth Project as the project director. She is also a non-resident fellow at Trends Research and Advisory, Abu Dhabi. So Neha, over to you.
Thank you very much, Griseldas, for the kind introduction. But the spotlight today is really on the critical moment that we're in with Myanmar. And as the tensions are rising, today's panel is not only exigent, but perhaps more like an emergency panel. But while Myanmar is, of course, in the spotlight for our discussions today, the idea behind our panel is to also underscore another extremely important objective within the field of IR and security studies, which is the inclusivity of the field itself. And for today's discussion, we're very delighted to have Indrani Bagchi, Joyita Bhattacharjee, and Annie Zaman with us, who highlight not only critical tensions within global security, South Asian politics, and so much more from their diverse expertise and ground experiences, but also in many ways tell us why we need an inclusive international relations and international political economy, highlighting narratives that women experts bring to the table. And that's why we founded IWIR Forum, to really spotlight some of these narratives and contributions of Indian women and women of Indian origin. So without further ado, really over to the panel discussion and our three expert scholars for the day. Thank you very much.
Hi everyone, my name is Vishal. I'm a research assistant with IWIR and a graduate student at the Fletcher School, Tufts University. So first of all, I would want to welcome all our expert esteemed panelists, Joyita ma'am, Annie, and Indrani ji. So I'll just do a quick round of introductions to all three of them, and then we'll start the panel discussion. So beginning with Annie, Annie has worked with Deutsche Welle. Currently, she's based in Myanmar and has been a journalist and researcher for the last 10 years. And her focus has been on human rights and also freedom of press. Joyita ma'am works with Observer Researcher Foundation, specifically in the Neighborhood Regional Studies Initiative. And Indrani ma'am is the diplomatic editor at Times of India and has been covering India's diplomatic engagements with the world for the last 16 years. So we will start the panel discussion now. So beginning with Annie. So Annie, so much thanks for joining us today. So my first question to you would be, what's the ground scenario happening right now? Because of all the news reports about violence on ground, even at the border. So could you just throw some light on what's happening? I mean, because you have access to local literature, newspapers, and also activists.
Thank you so much, Vishal and Neha, for organizing this. And thank you for counting me as an Indian. It's really an honor. I actually have to debate many times that okay, I am a person of Indian origin. So thank you so much. For hearing me out today. I'm based in Yangon, Myanmar, Kamal. And I'm not sure if you can hear, it's 11 past 8 o'clock here in Yangon, and people are banging pots here in Myanmar right now. And it's considered, I know that in India, many people may not understand or may not feel as close to this banging the pot and relating it to the Modi governments banging the pots. It's very different here. People feel that ward of the evil in some areas, the people posts, they're being noticed, and they're fires also fire shots at their homes. Right now, today is 31st of March, and I have to keep reminding because I have lost count of days. Uh, we have been living under the coup. Things have been very, very bad on the ground since the last 1 week. We have seen the deadliest weekend in Myanmar with 100 and some newsrooms are saying it's 141 people who were killed in one day. Some says 114, but the number is increasing. We don't know like exact number because we can't go out and go to the morgues or to the hospitals to check and verify how many people have been killed. So far, here the situation is that we have a curfew from 8 o'clock till 6 in the morning. We don't have internet after 1 o'clock. And there's no telcos who are providing 4G or 3G or any G. It's not available right now here. And today there was a long power cut in most like around Myanmar, and many people say that because the CNN star journalist has been flown into Myanmar, and that's one of the reasons the military junta doesn't want them to know what's happening. So basically, the flow information is very slow, but still the world knows what's happening in Myanmar. Coming to what's with the Indian perspective, it's very sad. We all know that Myanmar was once part of this whole big British India until 1948. And most of the countries from the neighboring countries, they like Myanmar's neighbors, they are supporting the military junta. What we have seen on the 27th of March at the Armed Forces Day, sadly, India, Bangladesh, Pakistan, Thailand, Laos, Vietnam, and Russia, they sent their defense attaches to attend the Armed Forces Day. And that was the day which was the bloodiest day in Myanmar. So the locals here has very and not to forget that in Myanmar, there are a large number of Indians who are living here or Pakistanis living here, or I don't know how to put them, like people who were brought by British back in the day after the First World War. They made Myanmar their home. So for them, it's quite at stake that, they are seen as like, okay, now Indian government is supporting the military junta because they're selling arms to them, or Pakistan is selling arms to them. So for them, it's important to support the military junta rather than the pro-democracy movement. So it's a big question mark for all of us right here. But I'm very glad if some of you have seen the pro-democracy movement in India. They have written a very strong letter that was published in the IWIR 2 days ago. And they have questioned that this is what India stands for, that supporting the military junta in the neighboring countries the way China does. So India is standing next to China here and supporting the military junta with all the violence and their bloody hands. Yeah, so that's what's happening right now. But if you want anything else, Vishal, you can ask me, and because you have to lead me because there's so much happening right now. I can't be very focused.
Yeah, thank you so much for that answer. I mean, just reading news reports about events unfolding, it's very scary. My next question was very specific on the role of women and youth in these protests, because when we read about news reports in BBC or elsewhere, so there are differing factions even within monks who support and who oppose the action. Then we see images of youngsters leading the protest with the symbol, like the three finger symbol. So I just wanted to understand from you, what's the role of youth and women in these protests?
So what we have witnessed here is, I think, if we are all those who are following the Myanmar politics, they were very much disappointed back in the 2017 when Rohingya crisis happened. We didn't see any protest or any reaction from the big cities, and especially from the Bamar areas. But now what we see is, this is for the first, after the coup on the 1st of Feb, we didn't see anything for the first 3 days, 72 hours, people stayed quiet. And then after 3 days, we started seeing the three fingers salute everywhere. And until 26th of Feb, what we saw in, especially in Yangon, which is a Bamar area, Bamar center, and we didn't see military taking up shooting people like cruelly or anything. And at that time we see a wave of like they identify themselves as Generation Z, young people who came out, and it was amazing. It reminded me of Egypt or like Bangladesh as well, or Iran for the Spring Revolution. And people were gathering at Sule Square, anywhere, from all walks of life, from all religions. And I never thought I would ever see in Yangon a poster, someone like, displaying it, that I'm sorry for what we did to Rohingya Muslims. It's a big statement. And we also saw that all the ethnic armed forces and also the ethnic small minorities in Myanmar, which people tend to forget that these things were happening. For example, in Kachin, what was happening, in current state, what was happening, or in Shan, what was happening. The international community was very much focused on Rohingya or very much in awe of Aung San Suu Kyi. But these things also came on the surface. And basically, youth were actually, they led it. It was not the NLD's government or NLD's like party, political party who led these protests. It was like young people, and that was initially the main concern here, who to arrest, because there were so many people who were doing it in different regions and different places, and it was very difficult to capture. We have also seen, for example, the kids from the military family coming out, kids like a wife of a police officer who's coming out and demonstrating. And I have an experience in South Asian politics, for example, like India, Pakistan, or even I would count Afghanistan as well in that. We have never seen these kind of protests anywhere where protesters are so organized. It's we South Asians are not that organized. We're not punctual. And I used to think that Myanmar people are like that too. And they were organized, starting things on time. And they always had like a string attached that when protesters are going out, someone is like not blocking the road, let the like normal people do whatever they're doing. And there's always some person who's cleaning the garbage. They never left like, Sule Square dirty, for example, in their first 26 days. And it was amazing to see like young people. And then on those protests, I used to go, and I witnessed like amazing artwork happening, pop art popping up at one place, and then the other place, someone is like dancing suddenly on Michael Jackson, which is now politically incorrect in the West or in the US. The world don't care about us. They suddenly start dancing on that. Or someone is like, one art student is like, just having some like blood dripping on them. So there was amazing things happening, and it was very nice and positive. But after the 26th, when they started using violence, we saw that military very sad to witness that it's very targeted. And they have been shooting people on the head, and snipers were in place. And they're not thinking who they are killing. We initially thought that they would not come for the Bamar, like ethnic Bamar people. But then the military here from the last 70 years, they have been doing this in the other ethnic areas. We have to remember that. And the military is not a British trained like in India or Pakistan. It's Aung San Suu Kyi's father who created this military, who supported Japan in World War II. And it's a different military. And it's I think other people in the panel can highlight that, where this military has come from and what their goals are and what they want to achieve. So, but coming back to your point, Vishal, the youth here really participated, and we are still seeing them. They're still like on the ground. There are 500 plus people who are being killed, which is a big number, being killed by their own military. But resistance is there, and a parallel government is in place, and many ethnic armed forces are joined. For example, KNU and KIA. And now it feels like more of a, let's see what's happened tomorrow, because CRPH has announced that a federal army. So let's see what happens next.
Thank you so so much. My last question to you would be, what aid is most important to people of Myanmar right now? I mean, how can the world respond currently? Because there have been talks of sanctions, but we don't know exactly how to respond because there's dual messages going on from countries like India.
I think the US and the UK has responded already, and they have done targeted sanctions. What the people in Myanmar expect from their neighboring countries, be it Thailand, be it India, is that stop selling arms to us. For example, India is still selling arms to Myanmar. India, for example, sent its defense attaché on the Armed Forces Day, which is until today the bloodiest day in the history of Myanmar, or in this current scenario. It's very sad because India, the India we know, or India which is democratic India, which stands for democratic forces, it sends a very strong message that is standing with someone who's a dictator, who is actually whose hands are like red with the blood of their own citizens. But then we also see that many police people have crossed the border and went to Mizoram. We all know the history of these regions, which are like the British when they left and how they separated families. So it's a very porous border, and people just move on to Indian states. For example, from Mizoram people buy petrol from Myanmar because it's much cheaper, and it's not a dry state on the Myanmar side. So 258 police officials have went to Mizoram, and initially 2 days ago, the center has refused to give them any refuge or set up any kind of refugee camps. I think the people expect that India welcomes them and made some proper refugee camps there. And I think that's the beauty of a still democracy, that after 2 days, the Indian central government has taken that letter back.
Thank you so much. We'll get back to the discussion component in a while. My colleague Grazil will now carry forward the conversation with Joyita ma'am. Thank you.
Yes, can you hear me? Okay. Hello, ma'am, Joyita. I'm very glad for you to join us in this event today. So let's pick up from what Annie had said on the recent government orders from the government of Mizoram and also from government of Manipur, where they had stopped sort of asking people to not engage with persons across the international border, and they have since rescinded those orders. And also politicians from Mizoram have also made specific comments about how India can do better and help them. So what do you think about this?
Definitely. I think the Myanmar situation puts India in a very difficult space. One, we have to look into, because the overall India-Myanmar situation, one, there is our security concern. So there is a center. Then there is also, we have a long history of ethnic connectivity, and that really creates a different perspective altogether. And here I think we are faced with our challenges, our strategic challenges, and also our image as a humanitarian provider, and India's role has been pretty. And this actually puts us into a very difficult and I would say we are in a very catch-22 situation, whether we should go by our choices of security, or we should also think about our as a country which has been known for its humanitarian, and also it puts challenges to our center and state relationship. You are absolutely right that the center, the state government are behaving in a different way. So actually India is stuck between two. So one way, Mr. Zorangthanga, he was very clear. He said that what is happening in India's backyard, India cannot put a blind eye on it, and India should provide asylum. So, and then it has come up in a very different way. The states are reacting to certain ways we do, and they are providing, one way they have recognized them to be the people who are coming in. They are already giving almost equivalent support as a refugees, and they are also given providing job cuts so that they can work under, they can get some job. Initially, Manipur response was little different. They say that, okay, the people who are entering, they should be treated differently and they should politely be turned back. But it didn't happen. And because there was a lot of backlash, and the Manipur state government has revoked the order, and now they are also giving humanitarian support or whatever they can. So we are set in a very critical situation. How we can navigate out, it's a very difficult situation to say, because the problem with India lies that we share border and there is a big elephant, which is China existing. So if we withdraw from Myanmar, is it a solution? We really don't know. And if we also get if we try to give humanitarian support, what is the outcome? Because one thing I think, and as a person who studies India's neighborhood policy, I think this is the most critical moment that exists between India and Myanmar relationship. Because for a long time, almost it is now a decade, we thought our relationship with Myanmar was sort of, we have worked out and it was going there. But now it has put a very different challenge. So what is the way out? One way, like withdrawing cannot be a solution, because if you withdraw, whatever support or whatever leverage we have will stop. So the way of negotiation ends. Definitely, since India enjoys a big amount of goodwill among the people, it is also impacting the thing, because as we always, it will be wishful that democracy will return to Myanmar very soon. At least we can desire things. So then what happens to India's image? So navigating this thing is a very difficult situation. And if we open our border completely and bring them, which is wishful thinking, then what happens to Myanmar junta? Because, then the juntas will think that it is okay, then the kind of pressurizing junta also creates a problem. So India is caught there. What should be the way out? To be very frank, I don't have a very solid answer that I can say that once, like a black and white answer to it. So I think India have to balance its path forward. Definitely democracy is something, and listening to people's voice is very important for any country, for any kind of relationship, because ultimately public opinion today or tomorrow, when democracy returns, it is going to have a major impact. So wishful will be that India engages with the military and try to give them, we have to tell them that this is something you can't continue. But at the ground, I think humanitarian support is an option we should all consider, and we should give support to the people, to whatever level we can. But we can always suggest, but the final call have to be taken by the establishment. Thank you.
Thank you so much, ma'am. In a way, you've actually answered my next question, which was how can India take a leading role in the de-escalation of the unrest? So I think in a way you have already answered that with providing humanitarian action. And is there anything else that you think India could do in the de-escalation?
No, I think understanding quiet diplomacy should be an way forward that government, I don't know whether government of India is already doing it or not, because I'm not an insider, but quiet diplomacy should be a way forward. We have to do it, and we have to go forward, because whatever my understanding of Myanmar has been, despite everything, the common people as such, they are very simple people. And after, and everybody should, and almost after a decade, they have enjoyed freedom. So in whatever limited sense. So they should get that opportunity. And when we people in a democratic country, we should support, but end of the day, the sovereignty of the country also matters.
So my last question to you, ma'am, is how do you think this unrest in Myanmar will impact the Act East policy and the multiple roadway projects that were actually happening, which have also been halted because of the pandemic? So what do you think will happen to the Act East policy now? And yeah.
I think with Myanmar, because why India is unable to take a strong position in the case of Myanmar has been that we have a lot of stake involved in Myanmar, not only our security, there is also our Act East policy, and Myanmar is an important partner. We have two important projects, the trilateral, the Kaladan multi-purpose project is there, and also the trilateral highway, which is very important for us. And also we have to understand BIMSTEC, because BIMSTEC, to be successful, we need Myanmar and Myanmar is a strong partner. Yeah, because if you tell me what is the biggest push in this government, it is the BIMSTEC. So the entire thing, so Myanmar comes in a very big way, which will be that normalcy return in Myanmar, and we go ahead and because any kind of instability in Myanmar is not in India's interest. A stable, strong Myanmar, a prosperous Myanmar is always going to help India. So we have to see how things, because now everything is very unstable. Making any prediction is very difficult, but as I said, peaceful and a stable Myanmar is the most important for India.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you so much, ma'am. Of course, we'll unpack more of this in the Q&A session. So over to Vishal now.
Thank you so much. Hi, Indrani ma'am. Thank you so much for joining us. Just a couple of questions. My first question to you would be, multiple countries and UN General Secretary have condemned the situation in Myanmar. And certain actors like the EU have considered imposing sanctions as well. So how do you think the situation will unravel? Looking from an Indian perspective, how do you see these things playing out?
So I thank you, Vishal, for inviting me. My personal view is that sanctions are never the answer. And the Myanmar junta has been the target of sanctions for decades. It has not helped. Sanctions always make you lose leverage, lose communication, and a bad thing becomes worse. Having said that, the US and the EU have put in what they call targeted sanctions, which is specific to the leaders or the military leadership and their families and the people who are connected with their families who are who benefit from this, mainly economically. And we know that happens. So that has been the approach so far. However, India has never been in favor of sanctions, and India itself has been a target of sanctions for decades. But India's never been and India's view is that we have to engage. That yes, the loss of democracy is actually a very, very big loss. But if you punish the military junta, which is actually taking recourse to violence against the ordinary person in Myanmar, sanctions does not help that ordinary person. In fact, study after study has shown that sanctions only help the people in power and just add to the deprivation of the ordinary person. Having said that, what is it that India is trying to do and is hoping for an outcome? So first, India has been, I think, among the foremost states in the UN Security Council, where India is a member this year, to not have the kind of statements against the Myanmar leadership, which makes it very difficult for the rest of the global community to engage with them. So ultimately, if we have to get Myanmar back into a path to democracy, that cannot be by sanctions. That can only be by a set of engagements, by a mix of incentives and coercion, or mix of incentives and punishments, or mix of incentives and punitive measures that would be able to help the ordinary Myanmaris who is protesting every day, as we heard just now, to be able to get back to the path of democracy. I mean, we've seen the history in Myanmar has shown us that for 25 odd years that they can put people in prison. They can do a lot of stuff that they are doing right now, and sanctions are not going to deter them. A second issue which we have not talked about so far is the presence and the role of China. And that is actually very important for India, as well as for many other countries in the world. In the last round of sanctions, or in the last round before Aung San Suu Kyi was released and before elections happened, it was again the same set of factors, the West, which sanctioned the Myanmar leadership. And the Myanmar leadership, all they did was move closer to China to be able to continue to do what they were doing. So the sanctions were actually not having any effect. And instead, it was driving the Myanmarese leadership much closer to an authoritarian system that really does not look after the concerns of the average Myanmar. It has taken a number of conversations between Indian officials and Western officials to prevent that kind of blanket sanctions from being applied to Myanmar. But to go back to China, as you said, Russia was also present, and President Putin has made it very clear that he wants to be play a role in Myanmar. Last year, if you remember, in July or August, the Myanmar army chief, who is now the head of the junta, he was in Moscow for the World War II Remembrance Day, and he gave a very sort of aggressive interview, if I remember correctly, to TASS, where he said that Russia would help them with weapons, etc. And yes, Russia does help them with weapons. The Chinese do help them with weapons. The Pakistanis help them with weapons. So frankly, the elements of coercion or the elements of military rule are provided by these countries. And in the last 25, 30 years, Myanmar itself has been cut off from the West. So Western sanctions don't have that kind of currency in Myanmar as they have, say, in Pakistan. But if you sanction Pakistan, it hurts Pakistanis because Pakistanis go westward, but they don't. India sells weapons to Myanmar. Rani, you're absolutely right. And in fact, I don't think we sell small arms because that's not something that India sells. India, in fact, last year, or at least before the coup, gave a Kilo-class submarine to Myanmar. It was a gift to Myanmar. That is a different kind of weapon than the small arms that is being supplied by the Pakistanis and the Chinese and the Russians. The fact that India will engage the Myanmar junta is in no doubt at all. There are security reasons, there are strategic reasons, there are reasons for next door neighbor, there are Indian insurgent groups remain in Myanmar. There are all of these reasons come together, and they're all very uncomfortable. There is, as Joyita said very correctly, that we are in a very difficult place, and there are no easy answers. There are no easy answers. No step that the Indian government will take will be without costs. From 2017 to 2021, the entire story of the Rohingya crisis, Indians were doing a certain amount of work in Myanmar. They were also doing humanitarian work in Bangladesh, where the Rohingya refugees live. The two might seem incompatible, but they are not actually, when you look at it from India's perspective. So I would say that, yes, my personal view is that we should not have allowed our defense attaché to be part of the Armed Forces Day event, but that's just me. My personal view is that we will be seeing more difficult steps being taken by the Indian government, steps that will have a mix of humanitarian actions as well as security actions. I don't think anybody is going to come out of this looking good, and neither will India.
Thank you so much. I mean, ma'am, you answered quite a bit of like the next questions I had, because the answer is very comprehensive. So I'll just move to the last question that I have for you. This is with regards to Myanmar's location, like geographical location, and what it means for India. So, and also the points you mentioned about, Myanmar leaning more towards China, and now Russia has come into play. So what are the optics of, India's military attaché attending the event when Myanmar was facing its bloodiest day, like, civilian protests and violence, and also expressing concern because, from freedom of press to violence against youth and different groups, it has been bad, as you mentioned, that nobody is going to come out looking any good out of it. So where do India's optics lie in this?
I don't think India is looking at optics at this point. None of the optics are good. I mean, the optics of the Manipur government's note of refugees having to go back. This is a different world. I mean, you can say that in 1971, 10 million refugees from Bangladesh came into, or then East Pakistan came into India. This is a different world. It's a different India. It's a different, and there is less and less, shall we say, acceptance of refugee population in India. And that is sad. It is not just sad, it's actually quite tragic. But we are living in very different times. So I don't think the optics look great at all for anybody. But the optics is not what they are there for. I think the idea that the Indians are working towards is to move to some level of acceptance of a return to democracy, some version of democracy. Now, there are many questions about why the coup happened on the 1st of February. What was it? What were the triggers? And could we have mitigated some of those triggers? I don't think there are any clear answers there. The fact is that as distasteful as it sounds, state after state will take decisions based on their own security. And if you look at it, say Mizoram takes a slightly different approach, Manipur takes a slightly different approach. all of them have learned from past years. All of them have taken lessons from the years of insurgency in these states. So again, the steps that they take on the ground would not be easy.
Thank you. Annie, do you want to join in?
Yes, thank you, Indrani. I just want to say that whilst being here, I feel that in India, it's still very much possible that they had taken back that letter, which the central government initially issued, that they don't want. So that still shows that the power of the people still lies there, you know. So I think the democratic forces within India still need to, you know, keep being vocal. I'm very happy that we are organizing this, and I think this is the what's happening in the last 10 years. India is not the same, agreed, but what India, the foundations of India as a democratic government is so strong that no one can take that away from us, you know. And that showed, that reflected upon like recently, that it was not optics, it's some babu sitting in, you know, Yangon, who thought that okay, he has to be like good, and whatever he fed into the central government, they had to take back their decision. And I think it's small wins, and the people who ever wrote those letters and those democratic forces within India, and in Myanmar as well, we saw like all the people like Myanmar staying here, like Indians in Myanmar, they were disturbed to see what central government in India were doing, and not aligning with what the Mizoram government was saying. I think at this point, even these small wins matter, but we have to keep pushing, and we have to keep pushing them to make like livable refugee camps for people who are going. There's going to be mass exodus of, like, you know, refugees, and India should prepare for that, and in the democratic forces in India should stand for that and push for that.
Yeah, well, actually, you're right in the sense, you're right, and in the sense that there is it's less the power of the state, but much more the fact that we don't turn away all refugees. However, you will find that the refugee policies of 2021 to be very different from the refugee policies 50 years ago. It's not just a question of India having changed or circumstances having changed. There is the pressure. You have to keep the pressure on the military rulers in Myanmar. India has also sent back, if you know, India has also sent back Rohingya refugees. That pressure will need to be kept up on the leadership. There is a humanitarian aspect, and that humanitarian aspect most certainly has to be remembered and acted on. But there is also a political aspect, and that political aspect is to find ways to bring the Myanmar military leadership to a more democratic system. Because it's not merely a question of refugees. So today we have refugees. Tomorrow the Thais will have refugees. The Thais will keep sending them back, like the Malaysians send back the Rohingya. This cannot be the only policy. Our biggest policy has to be to bring Myanmar back to a certain kind of democratic system, which is acceptable to both the people and the military. Given Myanmar's history, of course, it would be, whether you would have a Myanmar Spring or like the Arab Spring, I don't know. Since I'm not there, I can't tell whether the pulse of the people will continue. It says that they should continue the protests in a way that puts organic pressure on the military. We don't know that. At least sitting so far away, I know even less. So that is where the Indian policy is going, is as far as I can see. Yeah, the thing is that what Thailand can do is not what India can do. Annie, this is response to your point. So there will be a different approach. There will be different response from here. India can do more. Whether India will do more or less, or whether India will do differently, I think that is a question for the future.
Sorry, Ma'am Joyita, if you can add to this if you'd like.
Definitely. I think, for any country, it's our interest that matters. And for us, definitely, Myanmar transitioning into a democratic country is it will be advisable. But what are the leverages we have? If you see the history of Myanmar, if we don't add the pressure, that is going to keep a very different, the military junta can continue the way they want. So if we keep accepting, look at what happened to the Rohingyas, okay? They came in and now that country is almost, the future of Rohingyas is totally uncertain. And then they get a free cakewalk. Things can't continue like this. So while those who are coming, we should provide them humanitarian assistance, but it is also a reality that we have to have a pressure, and what kind of leverage India actually has there. That is also an issue we have to understand. So we have to tell, in fact, I think this is a very softer way of telling Myanmar government that this is not the way. And there is also ethnic tensions existing within Myanmar. Nobody is just trying to but why so many people from Myanmar are coming? So we have to recognize those realities also. And we have to do something in a more polite way. And this is one of the tools, probably that's what they think, that this is one of the tools that exist. These realities we have to accept. And one interesting thing I have to tell you very clearly, that everybody is talking about defense attaches thing. It is my absolutely personal view. It should not have been done. But see the countries who have attended those things, all the border countries, the countries who share borders with Myanmar, they have all attended that 27th March event in Nipito. So we should not forget that also. And China, Russia, and then the kind of geopolitics is going on. We can't overlook that part. So these realities are very very complex. Ideally, we can think of ideal situation is something we want to achieve that, but we can't overlook the ground realities. So all the border countries have actually involved are actually engaging with the Myanmar army. So I'm just giving you this point that nobody should overlook that aspect. And India and Myanmar is not the only neighborhood. We have other India with the kind of neighborhood challenges we face many challenges. So we have to think in a much larger picture. That was my intervention.
Yes, ma'am. So we also noticed that Asean, Indonesia plans to lead Asean and on the response and has expressed concern. So how do you think neighborhood groups like Asean and would actually help in this process?
I really, to be very frank, whatever my understanding has been, the countries who can really make some difference is ASEAN. ASEAN has the kind of leverage ASEAN has in Myanmar. Probably we being part of South Asia, our things are not that perfect, but let's see how the ASEAN countries are trying to, because in Myanmar case, we have, when in the Rohingya incident, we have seen that the ASEAN was not that great successful, or they promised something, but they could not deliver the way, probably it was half-hearted attitude. But let's see, it will always be wishful, because we will try to see that whichever country can make a meaningful change, it's always welcome. And So we will look forward to that, and we will be always hopeful.
Thank you, ma'am. So we have a question in the chat box. The question is, what is the future of the Rohingya issue, and what do you think? From Sanatan Chakrabarti.
So I think the Rohingya, to be honest, when the Rohingya issue burst in 2017 and Bangladesh welcomed all of them, it actually took the pressure off the Myanmar government. There is really no reason for the Myanmar government, even the Aung San Suu Kyi government, to take back any of those people who they had any case said that were not even Myanmaris, were actually Bangladeshis. Today, Bangladesh confronts a humanitarian disaster. Rohingya is now a group of fast-growing but stateless people. And it is highly unlikely, in my view, that the Myanmar government would take back any appreciable number of Rohingya refugees. So it's actually a disaster that is happening right under our noses.
Thank you so much for if anyone has any questions, please chime in. Otherwise, I just wanted to take this opportunity to thank all the panelists and IWIR team, Neha, for this wonderful discussion. We are sadly out of time, but any closing remarks from Neha? We'll be very happy to have that.
Vishal, actually a quick request for a comment, perhaps a closing remark on, given the humanitarian situation in Myanmar, just a question for our panelists, whether there is a point where we would actually say that it is too late, and whether we're approaching that point in light of the humanitarian situation. So if we could just have some closing comments with that thought. And I'm thinking a bit more from the perspective perhaps of the United Nations, the UN Security Council, and whether we're headed there or if we're still far away from the situation really being too late to act. Thank you very much.
I think the question would be act how, and at this point, the Myanmar, if at a point the violence, the killings become something the rest of the world would have to step in for, I don't think we are at that stage yet. Besides, in the current geopolitical situation, if countries like China and Russia continue to support the Myanmar military for their own reasons, I see no way that at least the West would be able to influence events in Myanmar. Joyita said correctly that ASEAN has probably the greatest leverage. I don't actually see the ASEAN even using that leverage. I don't see ASEAN countries, only the ASEAN president, they made a presidential statement. I don't see ASEAN countries coming together to press Myanmar to go back to a democratic system, or to at least to stop killing their own people. I don't see that. All your questions were about whether the US and EU, etc. Nobody asked whether Indonesia was doing it, whether Thailand was doing it, or Myanmar, or Vietnam, or any of the ASEAN countries, or the ASEAN leadership, and Indonesia right now is the head. I don't see that. I mean, I think Brunei is the head, but I don't see that. Partly because there are a large number of authoritarian governments in ASEAN, let us not forget that ASEAN is not a uniformly democratic group of countries. So I am not sure that the outrage that you feel that is coming out of US and EU, which is really, really far away, is mirrored in Myanmar's own neighborhood. So I think that is it. This is a question that we should ask Myanmar's neighbors to its east. Myanmar is a member of ASEAN, and I think a question should be put to ASEAN.
I think the answer has been very rightly put by Ms. Bagchi. So I don't have much to add, and I will only second that we have to press ASEAN to take a much larger role, which I think they have not taken the way we would expect. So ASEAN role will be much important in resolving the present crisis in Myanmar.
Ms. Annie, do you have anything to add as well?
I just want to say that being here, I feel that we have to stop. Myanmar itself has to stop looking at ASEAN or EU or the UK. The answer lies within Myanmar, and the people of Myanmar has to find their own democracy, their own freedom. And they are doing it right now. And the answer lies within the ethnic armed forces, who have now, many of them has said that they are going to protect the pro-democracy movement. So in the coming days, we'll see that how it unfolds. It's not the neighboring countries. We have seen in the region already in Afghanistan how the neighbors badly played. Neighbors never ever come to a help for their own strategic depths. And it's been there, and we have seen it, witnessed in other countries too. So I think the people in Myanmar are well aware. The first 6 months, they have been asking the UN and the other international and regional forces to come and support them. But the answer lies within them. And I'm sure if not today, it may take months, it may take years, but they will eventually get to where they aim to.
Thank you so much. So everyone, I think with this, we'd like to end, and I'd like to invite Neha to give us a vote of thanks.
Thank you very much, Griselda. Just to offer some very few words to really thank Joyita Bhattacharjee, Indrani Bagchi, and Annie Zaman for really taking out their gracious time and really giving us the honor of hosting them this evening. And I think beyond Myanmar, we will of course be following their work, sharing their work as we have been. And really, I think with this, we also hope to have a more equal representation in IR scholarship, more equal representation in future panels about Myanmar, India's neighborhood, and really across the world. And of course, thank you very much to Vishal and Griseldis and Aditi for really helping us put together this event today, and for really all their hard work. And thank you very much to all our audience. We will of course be sharing this video on Facebook and other platforms, and really hope to continue the conversation from there. So thank you very, very much, everyone. Thank you.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you.